Let's talk about something pretty wild. A plan to essentially reboot the entire United States government. It's being spearheaded by a new and very powerful group led by Elon Musk called the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. Now, on the surface, the promise is simple: save taxpayer money. But when you start to dig a little deeper, it looks a whole lot more like a blueprint for a total system takeover. And, listen to the public pitch. Cut waste, stop inflation, and crush the deep state. Who's going to argue with that, right? It sounds like common sense. It's a message that's basically designed to appeal to everyone, which, of course, really makes you wonder, what's actually going on behind the curtain? And that really is the core question, isn't it? Is this just about making government a little more efficient, saving a few bucks here and there? Or is this a plan to fundamentally rebuild American government from the ground up based on a totally different and much more radical ideology? Well, what's so fascinating is that this plan wasn't just cooked up on the fly, not even close. What we're seeing is the execution of a very specific, pre-existing strategy. In certain circles, it's known as the Thiel Playbook, and its goal is nothing short of seizing control of the entire machinery of the state. So what does that phrase even mean, seize the administrative state? Well, it's a strategy to systematically hollow out the professional, nonpartisan civil service, the people who actually keep the government running day in and day out, and then replace them with people who are loyal to the new agenda. The whole point is to transform the state from an independent body into a direct tool for the executive, all run by a new tech-focused elite. And the playbook itself is actually pretty straightforward. It breaks down into 3 phases. First, you need a battering ram, a political figure who can smash public trust in existing institutions. Step 2 is the operating system wipe. That's the systematic firing and removal of the professional workforce. And finally, step 3, the reinstall, which is when you fill all those now empty jobs with your own loyal appointees pulled straight from Silicon Valley. That operating system language isn't an accident. It comes from somewhere. The intellectual source here is a neo-reactionary thinker named Curtis Yarvin. He literally argues that democracy is like a buggy, outdated OS that's beyond repair. It doesn't need a patch, it needs to be completely deleted. And that philosophy right there is the justification for this entire overhaul. Okay, so that's the playbook. But who are the architects actually putting this plan into action? Because this isn't just some abstract theory. It is being implemented right now by a very powerful, very well-connected group of tech figures who seem like they've been waiting for this exact moment to arrive. At the very heart of this group is the famous PayPal Mafia. You're looking at a network diagram of them right now. These are the original founders and early employees of PayPal, people like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, who then went on to create some of the most powerful tech companies on the planet. And now, as you can see, that very same network has extended its reach from Silicon Valley right into the White House. And here's the proof, plain as day. You've got Elon Musk himself heading up DOGE. You have J.D. Vance, who's been called Peter Thiel's most successful startup, as vice president. David Sachs, another PayPal alum, is now the AI and crypto czar. And you see key technical jobs like federal CIO being filled by executives straight out of Thiel's own companies, like Palantir. This goes way beyond lobbying. This is about directly placing your team in charge of key government functions. So what happens when you have the playbook and the players are all in position? Well, the results are immediate and they are dramatic. Musk himself has bragged about taking a chainsaw to the federal government. And boy, the consequences have been incredibly swift. Just look at this number, 250,000. By early 2026, the federal civilian workforce was cut by a net of 250,000 positions. We are not talking about trimming the edges here. This is a massive, deliberate downsizing of the government's ability to function on a scale we really haven't seen in generations. And these cuts were not random at all. They were surgically targeted. Agencies that handle everything from protecting the environment to protecting consumers were absolutely gutted. USAID was put on the chopping block for complete closure. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, basically paralyzed. The EPA and the Department of Education, utterly decimated. So let's just be very clear about what we're looking at. This is not reform. This is what one source calls a Betriebssystem reset. That's German for a total operating system reset. The goal isn't to fix the old machine. It's to completely wipe the hard drive and install something brand new. But, wiping the system is only half the battle. The really big question is, what do you install in its place? And that brings us to the new foundation they're building, a totally different model for how a country should be run. Here's the fundamental shift. The old system, at least in theory, was all about democratic processes, checks and balances, all that slow, messy stuff. The new system is modeled directly on a tech company. It's run with the kind of top-down efficiency of what one German source calls a diktatorialer CEO, a dictatorial CEO, where speed and execution are all that matter. And of course, this new state runs on new technology. At its very core is an incredibly powerful alliance. Think of it this way. Peter Thiel's company, Palantir, provides the digital skeleton, the secure data platforms that are already deeply embedded in the government. And now, Elon Musk's xAI provides the brains, the generative AI to run on top of all that data. Put them together, and you have the new technological backbone of the entire state. And you better believe the synergy pays off literally. The companies in this network are landing absolutely massive government contracts. We're talking a $10 billion deal for Palantir with the Army, over $2 billion for SpaceX for a new missile defense system. So while this is definitely about ideology, let's be real, it's also an incredibly profitable business model, where reshaping the government directly enriches the people doing the reshaping. A perfect example of this in action is Project Golden Dome. It's an AI-powered missile defense shield being built by SpaceX, Palantir, and xAI. Just stop and think about what that really means for a second. One of the most essential core functions of any nation, defending itself from attack, is now effectively being privatized and handed over to this tiny network of private tech companies. So, where does all of this lead? What's the big takeaway from this massive transformation? It seems we've moved away from a government of the people for the people to something that looks a lot more like government as a service, run by a handful of tech titans. And that leaves us with one last crucial question to think about. In this new model where the state is run like a startup and its most important jobs are outsourced to private monopolies, you really have to ask yourself, who are the real customers here? And maybe more importantly, who or what is becoming the product?